The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Bizzong.
Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong. Bizzong.
This is Bizzong, the weird and wacky fiction podcast. With me, your host, Mr. Farag. Zongers, what is going on in your world? What's going on in the Bizzong world, Zongers, is I got a question for you. Are you buying your books off of Godless.com? What in the world's going on with you, Zongers, if you haven't signed up and created yourself a Godless.com account? Because that is the place. It is the hip place to be. You're going to get the best in horror, in bizarro. No shit, bizarro. Godless is a safe haven for bizarro fiction. And on top of it all, Zongers, we're beating out the man. We're beating out Mr. Jeff Bezos himself. We're giving the best rates to the weird, the extreme, the kooky and crazy writers who dare to put their work on Godless.com. I'm talking about people like this week's guest, the one and only Miss Dawn Shea of D&T Publishing. That's right. We're going to have a publisher on this week, Zongers, and she figures into the Godless equation because Dawn is one of the first publishers I've seen adapt and adopt to the Godless equation, Zongers. Dawn Shea is one half of D&T Publishing. She's the mouthpiece of D&T Publishing. She is the dreamer of D&T Publishing, and she was not foolish enough to let Godless.com and its opportunities pass by. She has grabbed Godless by the horns and made it work for her publishing house. D&T Publishing is an example of why not only writers, but publishers should jump on the Godless bandwagon and get with it. We're going to hear about her business model and how she makes it work with Godless.com. It is exemplary. It is why not only should you pay attention to Godless.com, it is why you should pay attention to people who work with Godless.com. Not only as a reader, but as a writer, because it is publishers like D&T.com that get in, work with Godless, get some releases out, give a little exclusivity to Godless for their writers, and everybody is going to benefit. You're going to hear about how that model works, Zongers. You're going to hear about how D&T, early on, a little bit before Godless even came to be, they became to be themselves, and how just like being in the right place at the right time and understanding the right opportunity, D&T has positioned itself as one of the premier presses for horror fiction at this point in time in the game, Zongers. It is an eye-opening, fun, and informative interview this week with Dawn Shea of D&T Publishing. I can't tell you how much fun I had doing this because it's been an interview in the making for a while. Those who don't know, and why would you know, that Dawn and I had several months earlier planned to do this interview, but Dawn came down with COVID-19. She had to put off this interview, and I think that was fortuitous. If getting COVID-19 is a fortuitous thing, Dawn contracting COVID-19 was fortuitous because we get that much more insight, that much more hindsight into the whole process. But we finally made this interview happen. So, strap in and get ready for the one and only Bizzong interview of Dawn Shea from D&T Publishing. Give us the gong. It is my pleasure to welcome to Bizzong this week a first-time guest and a first-time guest who's a publisher. You know I like to have publishers on every now and again, Zongers. So, without any further hesitation, please welcome to Bizzong for the very first time the one and only Dawn Shea from D&T Publishing. Dawn, welcome to Bizzong.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
It's great to have you here. You got this great little squeaky voice that almost sounds like, I should be maybe scared because I don't know how old you are, but I come from back in the Poltergeist days when I don't even remember her name, but that little exorcist woman comes into the Poltergeist movie. She's got that cute little voice, but she is the most frightening thing in Poltergeist. So your voice is reminding me a little bit of the lady from Poltergeist. Dawn, do we need to be afraid of you?
Well, it just depends. Sometimes, yes, you do.
Fair enough. I will tread lightly around you, but I definitely want to learn all about D&T Publishing. It's come onto the scene, and all things considered, pretty recently. So, why don't you give me a brief history of D&T Publishing?
Okay. So, what had happened was my father passed away in 2018, and it was a very short illness. So I was very bogged down in his passing away. I just, I had so many questions about my mortality, and then my father wasn't a bad man by any stretch of the imagination, but he never was really a religious person either. And I guess just from the way I grew up and various other things, it always just, it really bothered me where I thought he might be. So after he passed away, I really was struggling to even function with just mundane everyday tasks. And I had written for years when I was younger, and I had gotten out of it, and life, kids, husband, that whole thing. So after my daddy passed away, I was looking for something to get me out of my funk. So I wrote a story called Body Alterations, and I had submitted it to an anthology that was open at the time. And then I just decided one day, I was like, I'm going to write a book. I've always wanted to, and I'm just going to do it. And so what I had planned out was I had written down a subject for every letter of the alphabet. And I was like, I'm going to write a book, and I'm going to do a story for every letter of the alphabet. And I've already had all my subjects wrote out, what I'm going to write about. And I was talking to a friend of mine about it, and an author friend, and he was like, well, why don't you get other people to help you write the stories? And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, you write some, and you can get other authors and help and let them write some stories, and you can put together an anthology. And I was like, is that a thing? And he assured me that it was. So we kind of started reaching out to some different authors that he and I knew, and the response was amazing. And it was surprising to me how many authors agreed, yeah, we'll do a story for you, And so ABCs of Terror, it was our first anthology, and that's how it came to be. And so I had asked this same author friend that I was talking to about the anthology originally, I said, so what do I do with it after I get all the stories? How do I publish it? And he said, well, you can just self-publish it. And I said, well, don't you have to be a publisher to do that? And he's like, well, you can just make up a name, just, whatever you want to do. And so I started talking to my husband about it, and I was like, is this something that you're interested in doing? I mean, I think that I'm interested in it, but I need help. I don't think I can do it by myself. And so we talked about it, and he agreed. And my husband majored in journalism in college, so that was like, right up his alley. And so we did. And after we had, I think we had done ABCs of Terror. We had done After the Pillow Is Gone. And then we had just finished ABC's Volume 2. One of our authors, Joshua McMillan, he had a story in ABC's Volume 2. My husband and I had been having a conversation literally the day before. And I was like, I really like this publishing thing. I really like how it's going. I love helping these authors because I was seeing so many authors posting different writers groups and things on Facebook about rejection and being so hard to get published and all this kinds of thing. And and I was telling my husband, I was like, I really like the idea of trying to help these authors as much as I can and try to get, more of them out there and get their names out there and get them published. And I said, maybe we should, consider at some point taking individual manuscripts. And he was like, I don't know. And so we had a discussion about it. And literally the very next day, Joshua McMillan, had messaged me and he said, do you think that you will ever do individual authors' books?
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I said, my husband and I have been talking about it. I said, but I don't know. We haven't really made a decision. And he was like, well, I have something that I want you to look at. And I really would like y'all to publish it. I love y'all and all this. And so I said, well, send it to me. Just let me look at it. And it was a short story that he had written and he was wanting to, expand it to a novella or a novel. And, I read the short story and it was wonderful. And so me and my husband talked about it and he told him, he said, tell him, yeah, we'll do it. And, so literally after that, authors started approaching, and I never posted a thing about us taking manuscripts or anything at that point. And authors were just coming. It's very organic the way it happened. And I was so happy about that. But, authors just started coming to us and asking us to publish their books. And so here we are.
Wow, that's pretty incredible as far as a trajectory for a publishing house goes. I mean, as far as the starting out with an anthology, I mean, that's typically how a startup publisher will kickstart their thing. They'll come up with a theme or something to that effect, and you did that with the ABCs of Terror, but then it was almost like you were pushed to taking on manuscripts and standalone books and stuff. But what's interesting about that too is, do you still, now that, in hindsight, everything that's taken off with D&T, do you still consider yourself at the core a writer, or do you realize maybe that like publishing is more where you need to be focusing your talents and your skills?
Definitely publishing. I just feel more gratified in that. I feel like it comes so natural to me and it just feels like I've been doing it for so long, even though I know it's just been a little over a year. Well, we had our year anniversary in February. So it's been just a little over a year but it feels like I've been doing it for such a long time and it feels so natural, to me to do. And not that writing didn't or doesn't, I still like to write here and there. And if somebody asks me for something, I'll story, but, I just don't feel it's cool to do that at this point as I did when I first started doing this.
I mean, it's such a great story that because you set out, you just wanted to write a story and the publishing house was born of, sort of even organically there, sort of like as I can do this. Yes, you can do this, and you can get other people on board. Like there almost sounds like a nurturing aspect to it to begin with. I was like, I can do this not just for myself, but I can help out others, and we can all work together and create this anthology together. Were you? I mean, were you really that naive when you first set out to like the whole world of publishing? Or was it kind of even in the back of your mind, like, when you set out to write this down and maybe start, putting something together?
Well, to be honest, I was in just very few writer groups at that point. I was more in like books of horror and that type of group. So I had seen people post about their anthologies and things like that. So I knew that people did them, but I had no idea about the inner workings or how you did any of that or how you went about it.
Mm-hmm.
I had so many people help me at the beginning when I was doing ABCs of Terror. And I just ask them questions, like, how do I do this? What do I do? And Patrick C. Harrison III, he's helped me tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
And Kim McKinley from Silver Shamrock, he's helped me. And, it was amazing, the willingness of people to help when you ask them a question, and needed advice on something. So, but now, people are asking me questions about publishing, and I'm like, whoa.
I mean, it's great. And again, you say this is just about a year, maybe a little more than a year. This has all happened. But, I like that too, to hear that, there's a collaborative effort, that you can lean on other publishers, who have a little more experience than you did. And there's no competitive nature out there, amongst your indie, horror publisher, peers, because you can go to them, and they seem to sound like they're more than willing to to give you advice, give you pointers, like give you information you need to move your business, your publishing house forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's great to hear. And being a writer myself, like that's been my experience to hear that. I'm not necessarily shocked to hear that. But it just warms my heart, like, to know there's like just no competition, and that like people, I guess, understand, like, there's Death's Head, there's a good handful, maybe two handfuls nowadays, of indie horror publishers out there, but that's still a relatively small market. So, I think at the core, it sounds like, like what you do and everybody else does is like, you're just really big fans of horror, and you want to do everything you can to push the genre, to push the work through and promote it. And like, it's, we can't all put all of it out there, and there's a lot of good people writing really good things. So like, let's just all try to help each other out and get as much of this out as possible. Is that sort of how you would categorize the feeling amongst the indie horror publishers?
Absolutely. I mean, anybody that I've ever asked for help or advice about something, they have never hesitated for a second to answer my question or help me in any way that they could. And I'm super grateful for that, because I wouldn't be where I am, or, D&T wouldn't be where it is if it wasn't for them. Well, I mean, I might have struggled along at some, I might have eventually gotten there.
Yeah.
But, it's been super, super wonderful. Everybody that I've talked to, had any kind of interaction, for the most part, has been great. And, I think, I know myself, I'm a nurse by trade. So it's always been, I guess, ingrained in me since I was a little girl. I've always wanted to help people. I've always wanted to, see them be better, do better. And, I love a good project. And so I think that too is what draws me so much to publishing and D&T and indie authors, because there's so many good authors that, they just need a chance, and that's all they need. And so, it warms my heart every single day to be able to give these people that opportunity to do that. So, I mean, that's what it's all about, or it is for me anyway. And I think I can speak for, the other indie publishers as well, that's their goal too.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And that's sort of, what makes D&T a publisher that authors take notice of, no doubt. Like I said, I write myself, and it's interesting because I'm to this point, completely self-published author. I guess I've gone through the struggles you have, like figured out how to do things to produce a book. Like you and I are both doing the same thing. I'm just doing it for myself and not a lot of other people, so it's,
right.
It's an interesting thing. So with that in mind, my question is to you, as far as D&T goes, as far as presenting a product and a feel for the publishing house, did you have an idea of what you wanted to present, the type of horror you wanted to present to the world, from ABCs of Terror, or did that also sort of grow organically to like the types of stories that you were looking for specifically?
When I started ABCs of Terror, I knew that I wanted it to be. Do you mean overall, or just the theme of that book specifically?
Well, let's start with the first ABCs of Terror. Like, specifically, what were you looking for horror wise, feel wise, when you were, taking submissions for that anthology?
Okay, their stories had to be about a monster.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't be one that you had heard of, over and over.
Okay.
They needed to find a new. It didn't have to even be one that it could be one they made up themselves.
Yeah.
But as far as, and I was a little more stricter, I think, during ABCs of Terror, just because I was terrified. I won't lie. I was terrified to put that book out.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a little more stricter about the things that they could include. We had no child stuff, no rape, no, anything that was overly graphic just for the fact of it being in there.
Mm-hmm.
I told them if it didn't relate to the story, you didn't need it.
Mm-hmm.
Which, it's still I still kind of feel that way. But I have, as we went along, I have dropped, some of my rules down. I still don't, we don't do the child, any sexual things with children. We don't do that at all. But now the other things I've kind of gotten a little more lax about because, nothing's more horrific than true life, right?
Right.
So, and those things happen. And it's unfortunate, but they do happen in real life. And sometimes you need that to move your story along. So if you need that to move your story along, then that's fine. I still don't like things that are overly graphic just for shock factor.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I have gotten a little more, I shouldn't say lax, but I have gotten a little more where I accept things that are a little more graphic than I did in the first ABCs, just because like I said, I still didn't know all the rules and all the, all the ins and outs. So
mm-hmm.
I was just trying to be extra careful.
Completely understand. So, Godless will roll into this conversation, especially with that aspect too. But I guess it sounds like, it must have been because you set out to write a story yourself. You were kind of looking for the same sort of feel. I guess you were like, I'm going to write about a monster, an uncommon monster, and that's what I'm going to look for from the other writers to put this anthology together. Correct?
Correct.
So, okay, so that comes out. And you had some great people in that anthology. Did it, because you're new, how would you categorize its success? Did it do better than it fared, or were you like kind of surprised about how many crickets you get? Being a new publisher and stuff like that. How was the reception for the first anthology?
It was much better than I expected, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea that so many people would be behind D&T and be so supportive. And so when it came out and I started seeing people post pictures of the book, I was, I literally cried the first time I saw somebody with a copy of ABCs of Terror that they had bought from Amazon, because I was just, it just blew my mind that somebody wanted to read this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great feeling. So, that's got to help though with the success, right? Like to get that positive you said you're a little scared. Like, so when you release this book into the world and you're like not sure how it's going to go, and you get a favorable reaction to the book, that has to reinforce, the publishing house at that moment. Like when you did the first one, did you know, like, we're trying to do a publishing house here, or was it like everything that surrounded after that release that sort of grew it?
Well, it took us several months to get ABCs of Terror out, and I'm such a big list person, and so I had started writing these lists because things pop in my head all the time, and so I started making these lists, and I was like, I could do an anthology about this, and I could do an anthology about this, and so I had this like running list of all these anthology ideas that I had, and then I had gotten up to volume 10 of ABCs of Terror. Like, I can do this theme, and I can do this theme, and I told my husband, I was like, I think there might be something here. I mean, I think I can do this. I like it. I enjoy it. People are seeming to like the first ABCs of Terror. I mean, there's always going to be people that don't like it, and that's fine. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But I would say that starting the book and actually getting into doing it and working with the authors and all that is what actually grew the publishing house. Now, when it actually came out and started getting, positive reviews and positive comments and that kind of thing, I mean, obviously that spurs you along, okay, oh, look, they like this. That will, I can do another one. Maybe they'll like that one too. But, yeah, but I think it really started growing as a publishing house when we were actually doing the book.
That's cool. So, having this experience behind you now, done the first, but now there's a second volume of ABCs of Terror. What have you found has been your favorite part of the process? Is it reading through all the submissions? Is it, once you have your final, selections for the anthology, like putting it together? Is it, the marketing when it comes out? Like, where have you found the most joy in the process of releasing an anthology?
I would say the first part of my most joy comes from the submission process. Absolutely. I love reading all the stories, and I wish I could take them all. You're like, oh, I really like this one, and then you're like, oh, I really like this one too. So, but you only have so many spots, so you kind of have to eliminate some that you wouldn't have, you really liked, but you didn't have a spot for them. So, but then my second most joy comes from when I am getting the manuscript ready to send to the formatter, and I go back through and I read from start to finish exactly, all the way through. And it's been, usually 2 or 3 months, sometimes longer since I've read the stories. And so when I'm going back through there and reading it start to finish, I remember how good these stories are. And I'm like, oh my God, y'all, these are good stories. And, so yeah, and marketing. I mean, I like to market. I love to talk to people, and I love to, get the word out and let everybody know, hey, this is what we've got going on. I mean, that's a big part of it. So, yeah, I mean, I post anywhere I can post.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely made yourself. You're definitely the voice of D&T Publishing, and you've referenced your husband several times. Is he more the behind the scenes guy to the whole process? What's been your husband's contribution to the whole D&T Publishing process?
He is the financial side of D&T.
No, he's the man.
He is no, Dawn, you can't do that. So, yeah, he keeps me, grounded, because a lot of times I want to do things and I'm like, hey, let's do this. And he's like, honey, you can't do that right now. And I'm like, okay, fine. I won't do it right now.
But that's a really important balance too. It sounds like, because he controls the money. This is what we're spending on this project. I can only assume you come up with a budget per anthology or anything like that.
Yes.
But you have the ability to blue sky, the world is your oyster. Here's what I want to do. Here's what, let's create the world's greatest book. And then he has to reel you in within the scope of the budget of the project. But that's gotta make for like the best possible book that D&T can put out, right? That dynamic.
Absolutely. I know I wanted to do stuff, and I feel like too, it's, I'm such an instant gratification person. So there's things that I wanted to do before their time, I really think. And I think that he made me understand that I couldn't do that at that time. And then when I was able to do it, it happened at the time it should have happened, So, he, we've been together for 20 years, so he knows me very well. And, he knows how I am about, let's do this. Let's do this. And, so he kind of is a real me in, and he makes sure all the authors get paid. He keeps a very neat spreadsheet. He keeps all that together. So, he does all that good stuff, and I don't have to worry about it. So that's nice too.
It's great. I know, for as long as I've been publishing over the years, and again, I'm only self-published, but I've observed, right, people, and especially publishers over the year. And, for me, as much as, and I am currently in a mode of like, I really do want to work with a publisher, to expand my horizons and stuff. But, the thing I keep an eye on is always like, everybody gets excited about a new publisher. Oh, there's, because here's the possibility of somebody putting out my book, somebody new, and everybody gravitates to it. And there's lots of excitement oftentimes around a new publisher. And then you see it time and again, and I've seen it time and again over the years, a year, 2, 3 years, like they get all wrapped up into it. They try to put out all these books and they just overextend themselves, right? It always comes down to money in the end. And like you said, the biggest thing, I think for publishers, making sure the people that you have published get paid, because the one thing I've seen time and time again is authors turning on their publishers because the checks start coming in and it gets ugly. So that is like primo of importance. And the other thing too is just I see with publishers is like knowing your limits. Like you said, like I got this idea, I want to put out 20 books this year. And like, financially speaking, 20 books isn't always necessarily, a sound financial endeavor. So to me, that is like a huge freaking thing. It is just kind of knowing financially when to reel it in. As much as you want to put out 20 books a year, maybe we can only afford 3 or 4 this year and do the best we can with that. It's a slow burn, but like you'll survive, you'll last over time, and just grow from there. You don't want to like overextend yourself and burn out too quick. And so it's really, that's one of the great things I see with D&T is like, you guys you've reeled it in, you're doing your best, but you're doing your best within your means. And that's, I guess between you and your husband, that's that give and take. You're dreaming for the sky, and he's like, well, we can only get this high in the altitude with the money we've got. But like, I think it's like you said, like the next time you want to do something, well, we were very successful on the previous thing, so there's a little more room to just dream a little bit bigger this time around. I guess is it rough for you to have that sort of restraint when you want to like move forward?
It is a little bit at first. I do get a little irritated. But like I said, we've been together for 20 years. He knows me, I know him, and he knows I don't back down, and I know he doesn't back down. So, it's quite interesting sometimes. But, yeah, I mean, I know at the end of the day, he's doing what he knows is best for D&T, and that's all that matters to me. I and I realize I'll go, now, Dawn, you know. And I'll be like, yeah, I know. And so, and then I'm kind of okay with it after that. But I do have my little mad spells where I get mad at him because he says no.
That's always like when you watch those documentaries, about those power couples that made things happen. It's always that kind of dynamic, right? There was always a little give and take in the end. And again, hey, there's a lot of love there, right? Too, to make that all work and temper it all. But that it makes for a great story. I do want to roll in the Godless aspect to this. Where in your timeline does Godless figure into it? And did you find Drew Stepik and the Godless platform, what sold you to throw D&T in with them? Because you've done very well. You sort of do these, you were an early adapter of the Godless exclusive for a window of time. Like it's your initial promotion platform. So where does Drew come in with the D&T process and what made you believe in his vision?
Drew came in, actually, I think on him right before the relaunch of Godless, which was March. Was it March 15th?
It was early 20. I don't know if it was February, March, but yeah, I mean, he was drumming up attention. I forget the official opening of Godless, but it was definitely early 2021. I can generally say.
Well, Daniel Volpe actually had talked to me about Godless, and I was like, I don't know about this because, I grew up Bible Beat Methodist, and I don't know if I want my books on something called Godless.
Oh yeah.
And so he was like, well, just talk to Drew, just message him, and so I did, and I messaged Drew, and I was like, so. I own D&T. I'm interested in hearing, what the deal is with your platform. And so Drew messaged him back and he explained the whole thing. And, I talked to my husband about it and, he was like, you know what? Do it. Try it. I mean, all you can do is try it. And if you don't like it, then don't put any more books on there.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I was like, okay, well, let's give it a try. And so I talked with my authors that had books coming out soon. And, most of them were like, yeah, do it. Let's do it. But I had a few that were kind of reluctant at first, for the same reason that I was. But they have both came around since then and said, yeah, put my books on Godless. So, yeah, that's how we got hooked up with Drew. And, I think Uninvited Others by Summer Ficker was our first one that went up on Godless because we re-released it for her. She had self-published it initially. So, and she was the first one that we put up on Godless. So.
Wow. That's, because that's where you come on my radar. I think it was when Godless is, when it first opens up and everything, and you were obviously publisher wise, you were one of the first publishers embracing it. That made me take notice, no doubt, because I had same as being a self-published author and stuff, and sort of listening to the initial pitches from Drew, and I'm like, you have an apprehension, what is he? 25-cent books? What is this guy insane? It doesn't make sense, and I admit, until the thing really opened up, and I sort of saw where it was going. I consider myself an early adapter, but not the earliest adapter of Godless. So to see D&T publishing or positioning themselves with Godless, that was sort of a big sell for me overall to what he was doing. Because there's, when you see a publisher, even if we're talking indie publishers, but when you see a publisher throwing their hat into that sort of platform, it makes you take a little more notice because, what I know about, the situation, the first thing you got to think is KDP and exclusivity and stuff. And you can't have that necessarily. Was that something you had to back off of the books, Amazon's KDP, program, before, or were you already trying to be a wider publisher, when you were publishing books?
I actually had no idea how to get a book on Kindle Unlimited.
Okay.
And so when I was talking to Drew about it, because Daniel had mentioned it, he was like, if you have your books on KU, you can't list them on Godless.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't think they are. So I went and looked, and I was like, no, they're not. And so I had messaged Drew about it, and I was like, explain this to me. Tell me what's the difference? What do I need to do?
Yeah.
And so he explained it where and I understood what he was saying. And like I said, we didn't have any books at that time on Kindle Unlimited. But we have now put some of them on Kindle Unlimited because our authors have requested it.
Right.
And I just tell Drew, I need to put this up on KU, and he will leave the link up where they can go to Amazon and purchase it, but they can no longer purchase it on the Godless platform.
Right.
So, I mean, it's been wonderful in the fact that Drew is so willing to help you and be flexible with what you need as a publisher. And that helps me tremendously. I say all the time that Don Noble, he does our covers, and Drew put up with my crazy because I messaged them and I'm like, hey, I need to do this, and they're like, okay, let's do it. So it's always and Drew's so amazing. He always is helpful, and like I said, puts up with my crazy, and he does what I ask him to do. So it's been an amazing experience. I love Godless. I love what he's doing. I think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, and to me, it seems like you were like, again, like you were accidentally not into the KDP or whatever the situation was, maybe. Naivete, you were not into that, because obviously there is a benefit to being there. And that was, when I looked at things, I'm always like, when Godless comes out, they're like, oh, I'm, the next thing we're going to knock out Amazon. I'm like, I have not seen the thing that knocks out, anything that, like, what Amazon controls the huge, you got to throw that exclusivity into them for a reason, because they dominate the market. It's so easy to make money if you're out of that program. I started out that way. I was like the guy. I was like, I want to be wide and don't, screw exclusivity. And I resisted my first two books. Like, no, I'm not into that stuff. And the crickets were the loudest crickets in my life. And the second I gave into that and signed into the KDP program, my God, like it just opened up, and I'm like, why? I was just like leaving money on the table before that. And, as much as I hate that, as much as anybody hates that, the fact of the matter is, when you're publishing, anybody knows this is like, that's 90% of your sales, like those, just being exclusive and having that Kindle Unlimited, available to you. And just, the second, even without Kindle Unlimited, without the page reads, just, marketing wise, Kindle's just going to immediately like give you more attention. So it's an unignorable thing. And so when you see something like Godless and Drew's like, we need 25-cent books, screw that 99-cent stuff. And you're like, I'm not sure, because we're just sucking off that teat so hard from Amazon Kindle Unlimited. You're like, I love it. I want to believe in you, but like that was my hesitation of not really jumping on. And, it really wasn't until I invited Drew, because I heard the rumblings. I heard him on some other podcasts, and I'm like, I want to talk to this guy myself. And I did an interview with Drew for Bizzong, and the dude is like, he's the next Jesus Christ. And I know we're all religious here, and you don't want to talk about Godless, but when he preaches the word of Godless, like it to me, it's like infectious, and like, I just want to believe him. And at that point, I did have a book that I wanted to, like, I thought might be problematic or whatever. And I'm like, if there's anything I'm going to do, like to give this guy, to give Godless a chance, it's going to be this book. So after that interview, I'm like, I already had this in the back of my head. This sounds like the perfect thing for me to give you. Let me like revamp it and everything. And when I gave in to Godless and turned that book over to him, Scared Silly, if anybody's interested, it took off like gang. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. This is like, And it was that whole thing of like, the Amazon 99 cents and I'm only getting 30% of the 99 cents, but
Right.
I repriced it at 89 cents for Godless. I'm getting 90% of that. I'm making triple the royalty, for 10 cents
Yes.
less. And it made more money than it had been sitting on, Amazon. That was my first book. It made more money in a month, than it had in the last 7 years on Amazon, just sitting there. It was like, and I was like, I see the power now. And I see this, and you can see this, when he's talking about 50 cent books and people are scarfing them up. Look at the Godless bestseller list. It's all these cheap, quick, short reads. It's amazing. So yeah, to see you, be able to position D&T like right there at the start of it. And you have also recognized, like, I can release a book. I don't know what your window generally is about a month or so. Like, you will give Godless exclusive, rights for ebooks, before you pull back and just offer them into KU. But there's still like, there's gotta be so much money to be made on that, model, right?
Yes. We usually give him 2 to 3 weeks, depending on what kind of schedule I'm running on at the time, of exclusive, and then it goes live on Amazon. But it's still, it still does so well even after it goes on Amazon because there's so many people that want paperbacks. Paperbacks.
Right.
So, and our books have done fairly well on Godless, but I feel like some of our books are more traditional horror than like extreme horror.
Right.
So, now Volpe's book that we just released on Godless on Thursday, it's done extremely well, but some of our other books that we had before that they're all more traditional horror than extreme. So, they didn't do quite as well on Godless as I feel like some others do. But that's fine. I mean, sometimes you have to realize the audience you're marketing to. So, and I feel like a lot of the people that buy things from Godless are more into extreme horror, and that's great. I mean,
Yeah.
But
is that where, when you were talking earlier about you had to like give some concession to the more extreme stuff that necessarily doesn't, is that really driven by Godless?
Not really. Actually, it was when Volpe messaged me, Daniel Volpe messaged me and said, are you taking manuscripts? And I was like, yes. So he said, well, I have 2 actually that I want you to look at. And so I was like, okay. I mean, I had no idea who he was at the time, other than I had noticed that he was liking D&T post, regularly. So, but other than that, I had no idea who he was. I didn't even know about Billy Silver at the time.
Oh, wow.
So, I was like, sure, yeah, send him over. And so the first one that I read was A Gift of Death, and I really liked it. And of course, I had been I've read extreme horror over the years, and I was regularly reading Aaron Beauregard. So extreme horror never bothered me. I just didn't feel like, well, you would just have to know probably how I was raised. I didn't feel like it was something that I needed to publish.
Yeah.
But after I read A Gift of Death by Daniel, and I really, really liked it, and I was like, well, this is, a little more extreme than what we would normally publish, but I'm just going to go for it. And I talked to my husband about it, and I told him, I said, it's a big market at this point. Extreme horror is really up there. And, I said, I feel like we're going to have to adapt at least to an extent, and give ourselves some leeway if we're going to do this. I think we should be able to take all kinds of horror and make it work.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did. And our lineup for next year, we have some more, not as extreme as some, obviously, but we do have some more extreme type books, kind of like Daniel's The Gift of Death. So, and then of course we're doing several of Daniel's other books next year. So, it's kind of, you have to kind of adapt to your surroundings and the things that are going on. And I think that's, we're trying to do that and still maintain what we value as personally, my husband and I. So, that's what we do.
I can completely understand it. I've had since, Bizzong itself, since I interviewed Drew, and this was at the beginning with Godless, and he said, like, I would love to, one of the offers he made me after the interview was like, I would love to, like, simulcast or whatever you call it, like Bizzong interviews on the Godless Horrors YouTube channel. I'm like, well, I'm not on YouTube, so like, totally, like, we'll do that. That's a great working partnership. And that has happened, since that interview. There's more than a dozen episodes up now of Bizzong, and that will continue, including this episode. But yeah, it's like you have to play to this market. I felt like the things were going that way, like you said, and I totally recognize, like, value wise, ethics wise, I've had one guest since Bizzong has started simulcasting or syncing on that. His religious convictions, like, just did not allow him to, is like, his one request is like, just don't, please, I don't want to be on the Godless YouTube thing. And I was fine. And Drew is such a great guy, like, he gets it too. He's like, not a problem. Like, he takes no offense to it whatsoever. He understands people's boundaries, and that's for you. It's got to be huge. And it's an additional hurdle. I think he recognizes, like, because I don't know if anybody necessarily knows the background to Godless is really more of a clothing line, that he sort of bought as right. Branding wise and everything like that just punchy Godless sort of thing. Maybe not really thinking so deep as to, religious people having umbrage with it. But, if we all have that little bit of, like, tolerance for the name Godless and everything, and see the bigger picture, we all get into it, especially with people with ethical, religious qualms about the thing for you. Because I think anybody who's embraced it, who would have those things, understand, like, we're not having an atheist convert. There's, like, really very little religious undertones to Godless.com, right? It is a platform to sell books to people who just love reading and art and horror. Like, that is the thing of it. And we're not, like, promoting anybody necessarily, right. Denying their gods. That's not at all what's going on there. And I think that as long as you can, grasp that and appreciate that, we all, context is king. So we all understand the
Absolutely.
context of what Godless is. And it's great to hear, and again, you're an early adopter of it. And yet, despite maybe you might have some religious problems with it, like, you understand the context of what Godless is doing. And you have been, D&T specifically has been just benefiting and just grabbing the bull by the horn. Like you said, you give him a couple of weeks, we're going to do this exclusive thing. And when you release that, is that like, there's not even an ebook version, or do you keep it out of KU until, like, how does that model go for you?
Usually when when it goes live on Amazon, it also goes live on Kindle. We don't enroll it in the KU program at that time. Okay. I usually give it until, like you say, there's crickets. And then when I start seeing the sales drop down, then, we start talking to the authors about possibly, do you want to do this? Do you want to enroll in KU? It will get you page reads. And some want to do that. Maline, which is by Josh Schlossberg, he did not want to do KU. He wanted his on Ingram Spark.
Okay.
So we actually, put his up on Ingram. So, I try to do whatever the authors want me to do, because at the end of the day, I might have published the book, but it's their book.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I try to stay as, easy.
Yeah.
I try to stay as flexible with it as I can and try to, go by what they say and what they want to do. I don't always, but
yeah. But that's an amazing, business model for you. Like, yeah, I don't want you to be Kindle. I want to work with Ingram as far as like, the paperback is what you're referring to there. And that you're willing to be that flexible, and it's got to be, again, it's a learning curve to move from KDP, paperback publishing to Ingram Spark. But I mean, gosh, that's the like you said, that's, not necessarily always the business model, and that you're willing to learn that. And it probably, I imagine, and again, I've never worked with Ingram Spark, but I understand, the business of it. So I imagine like you open to doing that, figuring it out, and, doing that for an author, but it's still got to benefit D&T down the line, because now that's another front that you can, work with your own business model on, and maybe benefit you better than what the Kindle might offer you.
Absolutely. And it was quite a learning curve for me. I think it took me about a week to get it up on Ingram. And we had to do some adjustments with the cover, and I had to get with Dawn and get that done. And so it was, it was definitely different than what I was used to, but, that's what Josh wanted. And he wanted a bigger reach. He, was wanting some local bookstores and local libraries and things to be able to pick it up.
Right.
So that was why he chose to do, put it on Ingram. I mean, and like I said, I'm open. I'm willing to try anything, you know. I mean, you never know. It might be the better, exactly what you need.
Right.
So.
I mean, that speaks so much to me, to D&T and your business, and working with you, as a writer, like that you're willing to listen to your authors, maybe think outside the box, maybe go down this route. Yeah, it might be a little, it might be a hurdle, to get these things done. It might be a little more work for you to get these things done. But once you figure them out, maybe in the bigger scope of things, now down the line, you go, nah, we don't want to, we want to go with this Ingram thing. Like, we can, get you books through the libraries, get them into the bookstores for you way easier than we can with the Kindle. I totally understand that. And to hear that, that you're willing to work like that is incredible. Authors should be beating down your door at this point to hear that you're willing to do that. So at this point, you have figured out a lot of obstacles. You have grown your press. You've it's all sort of landed serendipitously along with Godless that just benefits you even more. And you continue to grow and grow and grow. So moving on, and Daniel Volpe, maybe I should touch on this a little bit more, because, he's it's another one. Like, he shows up at the right time, like Godless shows up at the right time, having Daniel Volpe knocking on your door, because he had this moment with the Billy Silver. Like you said, I didn't know what it was, but he had, all of a sudden this Billy Silver book had buzz like crazy. And here's Daniel Volpe knocking on your door with all this buzz behind him. I know. I guess the first thing was if you signed up for the D&T newsletter, you would get a Daniel Volpe. Was that the initial work you did with him? You get some short story or something to that effect?
Well, I had we had already signed Daniel to his contract at the time, but I had put out a call for short stories for our newsletter, and I had no idea that Daniel was sending one in. But He did. He messaged me actually after he sent it, and he said, "I'll just have this story, lying around." And he was like, "So if you can use it, use it."
Yeah.
And so I knew that his book was coming up in July. So I thought, well, let's go ahead and print his story in the newsletter and just, kind of get people excited about, his book coming up. So that's what we did. And Daniel, I had messaged him and told him, I said, I'm going to put your story in the newsletter. And he was like, okay, let's do it. I'll promote it. So he did. And I had a lot of people sign up for the newsletter.
That's great.
Just to get Daniel's story. So
you just keep finding yourself in the right spot at the right time. It's really what it sounds like is going on here, Dawn. Yeah, I mean, that's great. And as this episode drops, like, A Gift of Death it's still available, like, Godless exclusive at the moment, right?
Yes, that's right. It will be up until July the 9th, I believe.
July the 9th.
Exclusive.
Get on it. I can only imagine you ain't going to get a better deal unless you sign up for it through Godless, correct?
Correct. It's $1 cheaper there than it is when it comes out on Amazon.
Right.
So.
Get on it right now. Unfortunately, we're coming to the end of our interview, but I do want to, like, quickly touch on, like, outside of A Gift of Death, we're midway here through the year 2021. How many more books can we expect to see possibly from D&T this year?
Let's see. We have 2. I think we have about 6 or 7 left for the year.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, we have another one of Daniel's coming out towards the end of the year. I think it's in November. And, we have 2 more, anthologies, D&T anthologies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have Summer Ficker's last book in her Haven Manor trilogy, Empty Walls is what it's called, and it's coming out in August. And, let's see, we have a book by Douglas Ford. We have E.C. Hankson's coming up in August. And then we have, Mark House's. We have another one from him coming in December. And let's see, who else? There's one other person. Well, my mind just went blank.
Well, I'm sure. I mean, gosh, Dawn, that's a lot right there. I think your husband maybe, like, loosened the purse strings a little too much there. I mean, that's a very busy release schedule, but I mean, are all those books going to use the same model? You're going to do that short release window through Godless before moving on and doing a more traditional sort of, if we could call it a traditional with KDP. Is that sort of the model you're going to pick up from here on?
Absolutely, yes. We will be doing that for all of our books from now until Drew tells me no.
There you have it. I mean, right there. I keep preaching the good word of Godless.com. And if you don't, like, need any other reason to get with Godless, it's because people like D&T Publishing are just harnessing the power of that. They're giving you, like, exclusive, just cut rate availability to, like, new great horror books. 2 or 3 weeks, you're never going to get them any cheaper than if you don't snag them up during that, initial exclusivity window on Godless.com. Even when they go to the KDP, you're not going to get them cheaper. And,
right.
I know everybody loves, part of the thing driving all this Godless stuff is like, no, everybody wants to cut around Amazon and cut around the man and all that stuff. I have to imagine, I don't know your business model, but I have to imagine even during that short 2 window, even being cheaper, your authors are making out better on their royalty cuts than when they are on Amazon. So, like, it's just win all around. That's the loveliness of Godless. Everybody's winning. Godless is winning. Drew Stepek is winning. D&T Publishing is winning, and their authors are everybody is winning on Godless. Just get an account, sign up, it's just a no-brainer. The biggest hurdle you have on Godless.com is, if you don't know how to do it already, is just how to download a book, either Mobi or EPUB or PDF. I mean, and that's such a small margin of a learning curve. Like, it's just a no-brainer thing. And everybody is winning hard. Everybody's beating the man. Everybody wants a Jeff Bezos, shoot him into space and keep him there, right? This is how we do it. We buy books through Godless.com and D&T Publishing when it is available on Godless.com. That is what all this excitement is about. Dawn, it has been a genuine pleasure. I think you and I could go on for another hour like this, right? And maybe
Yes,
we'll wait for some more bugs to come out. We'll revisit this whole discussion and continue on. But it has been a genuine pleasure to finally get to talk to you, to meet you, to learn more about D&T Publishing. It's a publication that I've had my eye on for a while, because you're putting out some great books. You're working with great people, and I said before, like, I keep my eye on publishers, and the ones that, like, I can see them burning out too quick. I don't see that with D&T. I see D&T sticking around. They got a good head on their shoulders, and there's no reason for me to think anything otherwise. So it has been a genuine pleasure to finally get to talk to you and have you, present D&T to those who may not otherwise be aware of what you guys are doing.
Well, it's been my pleasure to talk to you too. I appreciate you reaching out and wanting to do the interview. And it's always nice to meet new people and talk to them and get to talk about D&T and Godless and my authors and all that. It's just a pleasure. So I really do appreciate it.
Buy D&T on Godless, Zongers. Buy D&T on Godless. That's all I got to say. Dawn, it has been a pleasure. I am sure we will talk again in the near future.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Dawn Shea of D&T Publishing, Zongers. What a wonderful conversation with a wonderful woman who is a champion, an absolute champion of horror fiction. Not only horror fiction, extreme horror fiction. Like, she's come around to that, embracing it more. She understands, Zongers. I say this like the Wayne Gretzky analogy. I say this all the time. She knows where the puck is going. Maybe it's not her forte necessarily, but she understands where the puck is going. Godless.com, extreme horror, everybody's paying attention. That's where the money dollars are, Zongers. So she is paying attention to that market, but it's not the only market she's paying attention to. She knows what she loves. She knows what she loves to read. She loves to read classic horror. She's going to accept that kind of stuff. She understands horror fiction and horror readers. So anything that's coming out of D&T Publishing is going to be some quality work. And, you know, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out the difference between Daniel Volpe or Aaron Beauregard and Stephen King and Clive Barker, right? You know, we know where the pendulum lies. It's not a big leap of faith. So we can all get on board with that stuff. The important thing is, like, man, I did not know this about D&T Publishing, like how they so bend over backwards to work with their authors to appease them. And they appease them to the tune of, like, learning the market, gaining more information on what they're doing. Like when she said she wanted to work with Ingram Spark, because an author of hers that she signed wanted to work with Ingram Spark. That only plays to everybody's benefit, because once she learns how to work with Ingram Spark and publish through them, it's going to be that much more beneficial to every subsequent writer that she signs on and works with that wants to go down that route. Zongers, it's a rarity that you find a publisher willing to work to that level. You know, usually it's a publisher, if they're going to go with Ingram Spark, it's like something they understand about the market themselves. Dawn is willing to react to the market, to whatever plays best, and learn and continually learn the essence of indie publishing, especially in horror. Like, I submissions are closed now and everything, but like, keep an eye, Zongers, if you're right, keep an eye on D&T Publishing, because they're going places. They have business savvy on top of a nose for quality horror. That is what I'm getting at, Zongers. And they're not above going into the weird and wacky realms, which is where we lie, Zongers. That's where we lie. So keep your eye on that stuff. And always, Zongers, always keep your eye on Godless.com. I can't emphasize this enough. I sound like Drew Stepik is paying me thousands of dollars to promote this shit, but I swear to God, he is not paying me nickel one, because I just believe in Drew's model. Godless.com right now is the future of, it's where the puck is going. I'm gonna take that analogy. Godless.com is where the puck is going. Drew recognizes some stuff about the market that just really nobody understood, and maybe nobody understood what we wanted, but he's giving it to us and making us realize this is what we wanted. Zongers, you know what I'm talking about. You got yourself a Godless.com account. It don't cost nothing to sign up for that. Just sign up for it. Like I said, you're gonna get some D&T books 2-3 weeks in advance, $1 or $2 off the Amazon Kindle price. You get it in any format that you prefer, Mobi, EPUB, PDF, whatever you need to do. If you need some side loading help, there's some tutorials there. It's really not that big a deal, Zongers. It's so easy. Every reading platform at figuring out what files you've downloaded, file types, and making accessible for you to read. So Godless.com is not that big a learning curve, Zongers. Get in on it and get on the cheap. Not only are you getting books on the cheap, but you're actually supporting the authors even more, Zongers. Godless.com is paying out 90% royalties. It's unheard of at Amazon. It is unheard of. I'm doing my book cheaper than I can on Amazon and making 2 to 3 times the royalty rate. It is a win for everybody. The readers, the writers, the publishers, the retail platform. Everybody's winning at Godless.com. It's stupid for me to tell you, like one guy's making out. It's not like I have to go with Godless to make money, even though like Drew Stepik is and Godless is making the mother load. It's not the truth. Everybody. Drew has created a truly equal platform. Maybe Drew's actually getting robbed, only taking 10%. But, as far as his business model goes, he figures that's what's going to work for now. We're all going to grab it up. It is superior to Amazon.com. Let's leave Jeff Bezos in outer space and get our royalties at Godless.com. That's what I'm talking about, Zongers. And I'm done taking up your time for this week, Zongers. But you are now free to go and listen to these other great Project Entertainment Network podcasts.
Mystery, suspense, action, adventure. What are you in the mood for? We have that. A Glint of Mischief is a weekly podcast where we read the first chapter of an indie published book. So sit back and let us help you find your next favorite book. Stop by glintofmischief.com to see what all we have done, or check us out on iTunes or Google Play to just dive in and enjoy. Until next time, see you around.
What if a storytelling podcast could be an interactive experience? Hi, I'm Mariah Powell, amateur author and creator of Hobbies Include Writing, and I'm openly inviting your opinions on stories I haven't finished writing yet. Launching with my original audio novel, Blood That Binds, visit hobbiesinclude-writing.weebly.com for more about the show and look for it on a podcasting platform near you.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.